or family caregiver. Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. I'm happy you could join us today. Very excited to have you and very excited to have my guest that's going to be joining me in just a moment. So this show is for caregivers, new caregivers, people that are becoming caregivers. There's a caregiver born every day. Unfortunately, there's so many people that need our help, and we have caregivers that are caring for people who cannot care for themselves, especially older people that may have memory loss, some form of dementia. Caregivers are there to help them, and caregivers are a special kind of people. You know, caregivers have to be resilient. Caregivers have to be flexible. Caregivers have to take care of themselves, and caregivers need knowledge and information and advice for all the challenges that come down the road during the journey of caregiving. So this program was designed just for caregivers and for caregivers' families who want to know more about what they can expect during their caregiving journey. So let me ask you this question. If you're a caregiver and you're maybe thinking about time to take your loved one and test out an assisted living, maybe it's time that you decided that it's better for someone else to join your team and help with the heavy load, and you're thinking maybe an assisted living would be a great idea. Maybe you're at the end of your rope and you can't do it anymore, and you're not doing well for the person you're caring for because it's hurting you emotionally, physically, lots of different ways. But maybe you're also a little afraid because you might not know what questions to ask. When you go to an assisted living, how do you know what you don't know? How do you know how to go about it? How do you know what questions to ask? And you know, will you ask stupid questions? Now, I'll tell you one thing, there is no such thing as a stupid question. So don't let that, slow you down or intimidate you. But I know that caregivers think these things because they've told me. What if you are a caregiver and you've already visited some assisted livings and you made your decision of where your loved one was going to go based upon your visits to that assisted living, based upon your questions to that assisted living? After your loved ones moved in, did you ever think, oh gosh, I didn't think to ask about that, or gee, I didn't know about this, I didn't know to ask about that? Well, I'm sure if you fall into one of those categories, you're going to love today's show, because I have an expert joining me, and she actually wrote a book about the questions you should ask when you're thinking about having someone go into an assisted living. And so I'm very excited because she is a certified dementia practitioner. She's an elder law manager and managing director of Senior Care Authority and the author of this book that I just told you about. So joining me from her home office all the way from California is Marcy Baskin. And I want to welcome Marcy to the show. She's so gracious to come on. There's a 3-hour time difference, so it's the middle of the afternoon where Marcy is. And so she's going to be joining us now live from California. And I'm excited to have her. There she is. Hi, Marcy. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Marcia. Thank you for having me. I'm pleased to be
Well,
here.
I'm so excited to meet you. I have read your book. I'm going to hold it up here for everybody to see. And the book is actually called Assisted Living Questions I Wish I Had Asked by Marcy Baskin. And it's got a nice picture here. I don't know who the people are, but you might tell me. And this is a book that you wrote. And I'm curious, what prompted you to write this book? What's the story behind writing a book about questions people should ask when they go and think about assisted living?
Okay, well, thank you for asking that question. It's a good one. First, I'll clarify who's on the cover. I don't know if your listeners know this, but our company is based in California and we are a franchise, so we are all over the country. We have a lot of actually offices in Florida. And I often send this book to a new franchisee, and I can't tell you how many of them said, "Oh, your picture's on the cover." And I don't really think I look like her at all, but that's my mother and my father. And I was inspired to write this book from my caregiving experience with them. And I want to just say at the outset that caregiving, what that brings to mind is, oh, I'm at home with this person and I'm cooking their meals, or I'm helping them shower, or I'm helping them get dressed. But you know what? I never did any of that. But I was my mother's caregiver through her Alzheimer's disease, and I was my dad's caregiver through the end of his life, and he had many physical illnesses. I was responsible for making their decisions that they could not make themselves. And the ones that they made themselves were bad. So they lived in Boynton Beach, and I convinced them to move to California and became their caregiver. I saw them every single day, and at first they lived in an apartment, and because I knew nothing about senior care, I thought, oh, I will find an over 55 community for them. They were in their 70s at the time, and it'll be active, and they'll have friends, and there'll be things to do. And I'm thinking it was going to be like the community in Boynton Beach where they lived. But of course, they were too sick to enjoy any of that, and I didn't understand that. It's very hard to know about senior care if you've never been there. And you're not there till you're there. And that's when I landed in it, when they came out. My dad passed away in 2009, and my mom, I decided to keep her at home with his 24/7 caregivers. And that was a really bad decision. She started to decline very quickly. She was in early stages of Alzheimer's at the time. She could still do things. She could even play cards and dance and enjoy music. And I didn't even understand what the options were for her. I just knew leaving her at home with caregivers, with no peers. And, it's nice to see your daughter every day, but it's not the same as seeing people who you can hang out with, who just want to hang out with you because they want to be friends and have a glass of wine with you. So eventually I decided to move her to assisted living, to which she said absolutely not. And I went on a mission to find a place that she would say yes to. I wanted to change the no into a yes because I wasn't going to force her. And I found a place that looked like a cruise ship. And my mom, being from New York and then Florida, this appealed to her. And they had beautiful floral arrangements and high ceilings. It was a gorgeous building. And I got her to say yes, and I moved her into assisted living. And I want to tell you, I might have asked 4 questions, probably something like, this is a long time ago now, but I'm guessing I said, well, how much is it? And what does that include? And can her dog come? And how's the food? couldn't think of anything else to ask. I ask more questions if I buy a washing machine or a dishwasher. And I moved my mother in. And what I found, and this is no reflection on the building where she lived, because they actually, when I look back at it now, they provided good care for her. However, I was the daughter from hell. I showed up every day, even though they asked me not to. And I'm sure because of what you do, Marcia, you're saying, oh my God, every day, you're kidding me. If there was a crumb on my mother's shirt, I went ballistic, especially when she went to memory care, which after the first year, she did move to memory care. And that was another whole thing that I didn't understand. Why were the people in there talking to dolls and feeding stuffed animals? And I had no experience with that. So as a person who had a very successful business career, nothing to do with senior care, and I had bought homes and cars and negotiated my way through many things, I did a really poor job of figuring this out. So when my mom passed away, I went back to school and I studied healthcare, navigation, and advocacy, and decided to open a private practice to be an elder care manager. And don't you know it, that business took off. And everyone I came in contact with knew somebody who needed this kind of help. So after about a year, I finished this book, and I will admit, I'm going to be very transparent here. I wrote that book because I was upset at that building. My mother had dementia and she died. So I was upset with them. And I was going to write it as, so make sure you don't do what I did and go to a building like this. They were a fine building. There was nothing wrong with them, because now it's my job to assess assisted living communities and memory care communities and understand what is important. And it was sort of a relief to understand that my mom actually did get good care. But while I was in it, nobody managed my expectations before I moved her in. And so I was upset all the time. So I decided to write this book to help people manage their expectations. So that's my story.
Well, there's a really good point to this, because your key word, I think, here is expectations. And when you don't know what you don't know, and you've never had experience throughout this type of caregiving journey, you don't know what to ask. Like you said, you ask more questions when you buy a new car than you do when you're, trying to find a place to live for somebody, and you don't even know what to ask. But I think the expectation is what frustrates a lot of caregivers. And I think perfection is something that they'll never obtain, because they have in their mind what they think should happen. And then there's reality, right? So there's the expectation and then there's reality. And I think sometimes, because there's such a difference between the two, it does frustrate a lot of caregivers. And I'm sorry that you went through that initially. But the good news about it is that this book came out as a result. And there are so many great questions in. There's actually over 200 questions in this book that you propose that caregivers can use to help them when they're in their search. And I love this so much because I read the whole thing, and it's very comprehensive. So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, Marcy is going to talk about some of the questions that have been written in this book and why they are important. So we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2828. 2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Welcome back. My special guest today is Marcy Baskin. Marcy is a wonderful person with a big heart, and she's a certified dementia practitioner, a managing director of Senior Care Authority, and an author of this book right here called Assisted Living Questions I Wish I Had Asked. So she wrote a book about others might want to consider when they are in the search for an appropriate assisted living or memory care community for their loved one. So I'm glad to have you here, Marcy. Thank you for sharing your story about your parents. And that is why, of course, prompted you to write this book because of your own experience. And that's going to help a lot of caregivers down the road with knowing what to ask. So I thought we would take a few minutes and talk about some of the topics that you have in your book and some of the questions that would be under those topics so people would know like what type of questions. And then maybe at the end, we'll tell them how they can get the book, right? So let's start with one of my favorite topics is when someone is first going to visit an assisted living, what do they need to look at? Because, it's all new to them. Their eyes are going to be all over and there's so much to take in. I think sometimes caregivers are actually overwhelmed with the information that might be, being thrown at them or coming into them. So in a simple way, can you explain what a caregiver should look for when they first go to an assisted living to shop?
Okay. So when you say look for, do you mean physically actually look at the building? Is
Well,
the first impression, what are you looking for?
Okay, that's part of it, I'm sure, but I think there's more to it than that. So feel
yes.
free to share. Yes.
Okay. Well, I think before you visit any building, you need to think about what kind of care your loved one is going to need to give them a better quality of life. Because I would think that that's the goal, better quality of life, rather than being at home, being isolated. And not that there's anything wrong with in-home care, because there's so many people who say, I am not leaving my home, period, end of story. Okay, mom, But there are people who can't live at home. And it has been shown that isolation and loneliness exacerbate cognitive decline, physical symptoms. So I will tell you about my mom is that she thrived when she first moved into assisted living because she had so much to do and she got to make some friends and, have her meals served to her, and she loved that. So back to your question though, first you look at the building. And is this the size of the building you thought it was going to be? Or did you think it was going to be a small little intimate place? I don't know in Florida if you guys have small care homes or
We
if all your
do.
buildings. Oh, you do? Because I know here in Northern California, we have so many small care homes where there are 6 to 8 residents, and that's all they're licensed for. And for the right person, that is a great life. For a person who's gregarious and social, and even if they have dementia, if their natural personality is to enjoy being around people and doing things, just being busy, even if it's playing bingo, whatever it is, a small care home can be a very quiet kind of life, a very sweet and beautiful and home-like environment. But I think the trap is when you go to look at a place, try and look at it through your loved one's eyes, not through yours. Don't look at it through your window. I can't tell you how many clients I have who say, my mother needs activities. And I say, well, like what? Oh, well, theater and music and book clubs and discussion groups. And then as we go through our assessment, I'll say things like, well, what does she do all day now? Oh, she mostly watches TV and she loves her shows in the afternoon and she really likes to read and listen to music. Does she socialize? No, never. She's never been very friendly. Well, okay, where's the disconnect? Somebody's looking through somebody else's window, not the person that they're about to place. So I think that's a super important piece of information to remember when because usually you are making the decision for somebody else. It's just the way it is. It's great when they can be part of the decision, but ultimately you're presenting them with their options. Um, you want to make sure the obvious is that the building is clean and that it smells good when you walk in the front door. And what are people doing when you walk in the building, in the lobby? What do you see? Is it empty? Are there people talking to each other? Are there caregivers? Is there anybody around? I don't know about you, Marcia, but I've walked into buildings where nobody's greeted me and I've had a client with me and I'm looking around saying, well, we had an appointment and there's nobody here. You want to feel into the energy of the building. Like, are people engaged? And sometimes I will say this, I was all up in arms one time because I said, there's nobody here. Where is everybody? They were all at a movie. They had a beautiful theater in the building. They had just had lunch and they were all watching a movie. I mean, it's not the end of the world. So, and then as you start to travel around the building, you're going to want to notice, of course, the physical plant. Is there deferred maintenance? Are they taking care of the building? Does it need to be painted? Are there tripping hazards? All kinds of things. But what I look for primarily is, what are the caregivers doing? Are they sitting around texting? Sometimes they are. Or are they talking to residents? Are they sitting in a corner talking to each other? Or are they looking for things to do to help the people who live there and pay to live there? That's what they should be doing. Are there managers on duty? Are there people in charge? And I know I used to get very upset because at night, when everyone was sound asleep, there wasn't a manager on duty, but there was a med tech. But I didn't know what a med tech was. How am I supposed to know what that is? And there would be one person for 30 residents, and I would be incredibly upset about that. And my mother slept through the night. She never had a problem. But I found that disturbing, that there wasn't more people on duty. And I know it's hard to pay for care that's not actually happening, especially at night. But I wanted to feel like there was, if there was one person in an emergent situation and my mother or someone else had an emergent situation, that second person would not have to wait for 20 minutes if they fell or they really needed help. And these are questions that you ask when you go on the tour too. I mean, you can just tell so much by what you see or imagine you are seeing, but you have to ask the questions. What's important to your mom or dad if you're placing them? Do they care about food, or does your mom happy with a tuna sandwich for lunch every day? And there's nothing wrong with that. But if food is an important thing, my mother really cared about food. I had to find a place where they prepared really good meals and where they had choices. My mother, after a while, could not order off of a menu, but she certainly knew what she was eating. So that was important to us. One thing I always do, whether it's a large place or a small care home, I always go to the bathroom. I want to see what that bathroom looks like. How clean is it? I mean, that's really important. Is somebody, every time someone goes in that bathroom, somebody should head in there and make sure that it's left the way they want it to be left. Some buildings, I will say this, and I don't mean to contradict myself, but some buildings Their physical plant might be a little tired and you might be a little put off by that. But ultimately, the care is everything. Care is everything. And in California, we have a good system with licensing where we can look up any citations or violations that have happened. You want to understand that before you walk into a building, not after, before, because it might keep you from even going to a building. For example, in our state, and I don't know anything about other states, what the regulations are, but there is a range of how hot the hot water has to be. So if licensing comes in for a random visit and checks your water, you will get a citation if it's off 1 or 2 degrees. Do I care about that for my mom? No, not really. Is that going to hurt anybody? No. I mean, they have to have regulations, obviously. But if somebody has a violation because somebody got out the front door and nobody knew, and it's a memory care facility, that's not good. That's dangerous. Those are questions to ask. And so I do know, because we are a national company, that some states don't have that information readily available, but you can certainly ask the person who is giving you a tour. I would also look at where, if the residents aren't all at a movie, then where are they right now? It's 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Where are they? We know at mealtime where they're all going to be. They're going to be lined up waiting to go into the dining room, because meals are an event when you live in assisted living. It
Right.
is an activity. But where are they during the day? And sometimes it might seem a little quiet, and then all of a sudden you see there's a group in an activity room and they're painting ceramic mugs. And there's a small group of people in a corner at a table doing a jigsaw puzzle. All that stuff is good. You know, I might not want to paint mugs or do jigsaw puzzles. Well, actually, I like jigsaw puzzles, but my mother enjoyed that. She was making glass jewelry when she was in memory care. I'm sure they supervised her very highly. You also want to notice how many caregivers you see during your tour. I was recently at a building, and granted, it was during COVID, and they opened up for tours, and they had about 43 residents, and the entire hour and a half I was there with my client, I saw one caregiver walking around for 43 people. And I asked the marketing director, I said, how many caregivers are on right now? And I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was something like, well, we only have so-and-so on because, you know, it's the people who are here are not that high acuity. But this building was all memory care, and you can relate to that, Marcia. I mean, 43 people, one caregiver. Guess where I don't tour anybody anymore. Yeah, not good. Not good.
Not good. Yeah. Those, all those are super good tips, and there's so many things, for caregivers to remember, and they might not remember when they're there because, like I said, there's a lot of information. So I think your suggestion in the book was actually take the book with you, look up the sections that are important to you, and have the book right there to ask the questions. There's nothing wrong with having your questions written out. I've had many caregivers come with their questions to make sure, because if a caregiver gets all their questions answered, they're going to feel a lot more comfortable with making a decision and a lot more comfortable with the community or the facility that they're touring. So I like this idea. Bring the questions with you. You make that in the book, and you can just take the book and there you go. You have it. So
there's even places for notes in the book.
Exactly. So speaking of books, we're going to go to a commercial break and thank our sponsor, and we're going to be giving away a book. So you want to stay tuned for that. You might get a free book, and we'll be right back and more with Marcy when we return.
Feelings of depression, isolation, and frustration are common among persons living with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's common among those who care for them, too. It takes a lot of patience and courage. It also takes knowing when you can no longer do it alone. At Arden Courts, memory care is all we do. Talk to us. We know. We understand. We can help. Don't let guilt keep you from making the right decision. Visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines.
You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
At this time, I'd like to thank our national sponsor for making this program available, and that would be Arden Court's Memory Care Community. Arden Courts is a leader when it comes to memory care communities, as they have over 50 communities throughout the United States, 10 of them here in Florida. None of them in California right now where my guest is, but who knows, we may eventually get there too. But Arden Courts is there for you. They not only take care of people that have memory problems, they take care of the caregiver. And so they want to give you a free book just for tuning into this program. So if you're listening on iHeartRadio, on the app, or if you're tuning in on your phone or your computer to the caregiversolutions.info show, we want to provide you with this book. It's called The 36-Hour Day. It's a wonderful resource for caregivers. It's actually in its 5th edition right now, so it's really updated all the time because it is a great book. And you will learn so much from this book. It's actually called The 36-Hour Day because Dr. Peter Rabins, who co-authored this book, had a caregiver in a support group one time, and she said, I'm a caregiver, and it's like I'm cramming 36 hours into a 24-hour day. That's how busy I am. So if you feel like this, then you need to get this book, and it's absolutely free. All you have to do is send an email and say, I heard about the free offer on the Caregiver Solution Info Show. Send your name, your address, and your telephone number, and send it to delray@arden-courts.com. That's DELRAY at Arden, ARDEN -courts, COURTS.com, and get your free book. You'll be really happy that you did. So my guest today also wrote a book. Her name is Marcy Baskin. Marcy is a certified dementia practitioner, an elder care manager, an author, and she's a managing director of a national company called Senior Care Authority. And Senior Care Authority is a national network of experts that help to place seniors and give caregivers information to place seniors into places that are appropriate for them based upon their needs, based upon their budget, based upon what they're wanting to go as far as location. And so she's joining us from her home office in California, and we're going to talk more about that in a few minutes. So, Marcy, I'm so glad you're here. We're talking about things in your book that caregivers need to know and questions they need to ask when they are shopping for an assisted living. And based upon your personal experience, and now, of course, based upon your professional expertise. So we're talking about things that caregivers need to ask. When it comes to dementia specifically, now we talked a lot about before the commercial break, going into an assisted living, in general, what you should look for, things to observe, but what specifics might be different when you have a loved one with dementia and you're looking at a memory community? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, how long do we have? I also want to say that book that you're giving away is a great book. I recommend it all the time. It's an excellent book. A lot of the same things are important in memory care, but I think what's really important, even more so than assisted living, is the care. And who are the caregivers? What is their training? What do the people in memory care do all day? Because they're usually not self-directed, and they are going to need to be guided, and they're going to need to be cared for with most of their activities of daily living, which I'm sure your listeners know what those are. So, and just in case they don't, it's things like dressing, grooming, bathing, eating, toileting. Most people who are in memory care do need that. And again, it's a little sensitive, but when you walk into a memory care, what does it smell like? Because people have accidents How quickly are those accidents tended to? And you'll find that it's different in different places. So that is really important. How many caregivers are there for the number of people who are in memory care? Is there more than one quote unquote neighborhood? I know here we have neighborhoods. Like we'll have a neighborhood where people are more advanced and really not able to do much for themselves. And we'll have other neighborhoods where they do need the supervision of 24/7 memory care, but they still are able to self-direct and maybe go outside into the courtyard, or maybe they still do read a book. If they remember it, who knows? But if you go into memory care, you often see people reading the newspaper. I'm always curious about that. What I don't want to see when I go into memory care are 8 recliners lined up in front of a blaring TV. To me, that's a red flag. That's just laziness and uncaring as far as I'm concerned. And there are still so many things that people with dementia can do. So we try not to think about what they can't do. Think about what they can do and offer it, have it available. What are the caregivers like? How do they talk to the residents? How do they talk about the residents? Does a caregiver say to another caregiver, you know, Mrs. Smith hasn't had a snack in a few hours. I think let's just get her in here and have her have some pudding or something. I don't want to ever hear someone say, oh, 101 needs a snack. That's not okay. It's so dehumanizing, and it happens a lot. I tour many, many buildings and have over the last decade. So we want to make sure that people are being treated with respect, that their dignity is being protected, and that they're not just being warehoused. And you could have a very beautiful building where there's not much going on, and it's not good for the resident. You don't want to see your mom like that. I remember one day, and this was an accident, and they, believe me, they never did it again. But my mother had stopped walking, and she was later in her dementia, and I walked in the common area because in memory care, quite often, the residents are all in one area. And my mom was in her wheelchair facing a wall. And I just stood there for a couple of minutes just to see, like maybe somebody was helping her and then they got called away. And I stood there for a couple of minutes. Nobody came to take her away from the wall. She barely spoke at that point. But what was the experience like for her to be sitting in a wheelchair staring at a wall? In my opinion, she didn't like it, but she didn't know how to ask. And a lot of times that's what we find with dementia, that there are unmet needs that are causing people to behave a certain way, which starts this whole string of assumptions about them. But that's a whole other subject on training and how to see people with dementia. Don't assume because they haven't asked that they don't need something. I always check out the food and the bathrooms, the public bathrooms, always. And other than that, I mean, it's very similar to assisted living in terms of the physical plant. But when you're sitting with the director of memory care, ask them what they do all day. I'm not impressed by a board that lists all these activities. I want to know how many of those activities actually happen, how many people participate, because most of the buildings do have a nice, juicy list, right? But if nobody does them, or I remember, being at a memory care facility 3 times in 1 month, and each time the art class was supposed to be happening, I purposely came at that time to show my client there was no art class. And why was there no art class? Because the instructor didn't show up. So I want to know about that. How much in reality is that board of activities? What does it mean to me? When I'm not there, what is my mom doing?
You're right, because a lot of times, they have to have the activities. It's required by the laws of the state to have activities listed. And sometimes it's just for show. And you're right. Do they really happen? And how enthusiastically do they happen? Are they inviting the residents? How in memory care, you want to be sure that the residents are taken and invited to those activities, because they won't know where to go, when to go, how to get to where they need to be. And so they need to be invited and escorted and shown. And if that's not going to happen, then they're not going to make it. And that's really sad. So the involvement, I think, of the staff is just so much more important in memory care, because they are everything to the people that, they just need that special attention. And the other thing, of course, is the safety issues. How does a memory care keep the residents safe? Okay, and that's going to be another discussion, but that's a question to ask, because how do you check on them? How do you know? You mentioned Marcy was excellent. They can't express themselves all the time, and yet they might need something, and that might cause them to act out, get added, and a good training ongoing on dementia care is going to let caregivers know, oh, perhaps she, needs change. Perhaps she's thirsty, or perhaps she's hungry. So that's excellent, and those are
Or in
valid
pain.
questions.
How about pain? I mean, pain is one of the most common things for what we call behaviors, because they don't know how to say, my leg hurts. How do you recognize that? I'm very interested in the training that people get who are working in memory care. I'm on assisted living as well, because the truth is, in assisted living, there's usually some cognitive decline too.
Yeah. And one of the ways you can find out about training is their experience. A good question to ask is, how long have your employees been working here? What's the longevity rate of your
Right.
caregivers? How long has your staff been involved? What kind of training do they get? Is it ongoing? Is it just once? What's their expertise? Because everybody, has something special to offer. But it's really, really important, to know that. And because it is so, it's so sad when you have someone caring for somebody else, they just don't get it. They're there, and yes, they might be, doing a job, but if their heart's not in it, and I feel that caregiving, you have to have a heart for it. And if you love it and you care, it's going to show in your actions. It's going to show in the way you interact with residents. And if a caregiver has longevity, and I'm not talking a year, I'm talking 5, 10, 15, 20 years, because there are some communities that have, caregivers that love what they do, and they're there for so many years. That's a big clue, because it's a hard job. And if they're there that long and they're still there taking care of people, that is a really good clue as to how that community operates, right? So those are all really, really good tips and suggestions, Marcy. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back, and Marcy's going to talk about something that you all as caregivers can tap into. It's a special conference coming up, and she's going to tell us all about it when we come back. We'll be right back.
Somewhere at the corner of bewildered and confused is a lost mother, a father, a sibling, a grandparent. Wandering is a common symptom of Alzheimer's or related dementias, and can often make those who care for a loved one feel just as lost. If you're looking for a place that's safe and secure, look to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines.
You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
My guest today is Marcy Baskin. She's a certified dementia practitioner, elder law manager, and managing director of Senior Care Authority. And as managing director of Senior Care Authority, Marcy, I know that you are putting together a big conference coming up in about a week, and I'd love for you to tell everybody what that's about and how they can tap into it.
Okay. In 2018, we decided that we were going to have an annual event, and we called it Living with Dementia. And it is designed for family caregivers, professional caregivers. It's designed for providers. It's designed for anybody who touches the lives of somebody who is touched by dementia, whether it's themselves or a loved one. And we have 9 speakers throughout the day. It starts at 8:30 in the morning, Pacific time, so 11:30 your time, and it lasts, I believe, 5 or 6 hours. We have a couple of little breaks there, so you can run and get a glass of water. But we have 9 speakers. It's very robust. And this program has been fabulous for us. We didn't do one last year because of COVID, because we used to do it live. This year we decided to do it live stream, and we're doing it as a benefit for the Walk to End Alzheimer's. So it costs $40 for the day, and all the money goes to the walk.
And
if you
so
would
that's
like,
open to everybody, right?
it's open to anybody. And if you sign up and you aren't able to stay for the whole day, or if you sign up and you can't make it that day, you will be entitled to get a recording of the entire program. So you won't miss it. If you want to sign up, I know I should have a link to give you, but it's one of those bit.ly things. So instead of trying to give you that, I will tell you someone you can email who can sign you up. Just send an email to Loretta, that's LORETTA, at seniorcareauthority.com.
Okay. You want to say that one more time so everybody gets it?
Loretta, LORETTA, at seniorcareauthority.com.
Great. Well, I hope everybody taps into that. You know, I love it that it's a fundraiser for the Walk to End Alzheimer's. And I understand the whole $40 gets donated right to the Alzheimer's Association. And thank you for doing that and putting that on. I want to read something that you wrote in your book. I was so touched by this. At the end of your book, you had something called Final Words. And I just thought this was so lovely that you wrote, and I want to read it to our audience right now, with your permission.
Of course. Of course.
So Marcy says this: I hear myself saying to my clients often, this is precious time. It is not replaceable. These are the last memories you're going to be able to make with your person. Be present, thoughtful, and generous. Later, you'll feel better for having done this, knowing that all you did really mattered. The end of life, years, months, weeks, or days, has the possibility of being a time of forgiveness and rich healing, a time of deep connection and intimacy. That doesn't preclude sadness and loss, but it is a time like no other in the cycle of life. Enter it with an open heart and see what happens. And those are beautiful words, Marcy. Thank you for that. That was a blessing.
Thanks for reading that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And so before we go, I want you to talk a little bit about how someone could find a senior care authority rep, because it's your company and you have reps all over the country who can help people locate wonderful communities that are the best place, because you know it's not all cookie cutter, it's not all one place for everybody. Depends on lots of factors. So how can someone find someone like you or some of the other franchisees?
Okay, so I would like to just be really clear that all our franchisees are business owners. They each own their own business. They do not work for us. We provide them with very robust training. And I am going to plug one other thing that we do in our company. We are the proud providers of a program called Beyond Driving with Dignity. And for people who have a loved one who is having some driving challenges due to advanced age, we do something called a self-assessment, an enhanced self-assessment. It is just amazing, but you can go to our website and find out about that. So the way to find somebody local is just to go to seniorcareauthority.com, and there's a little box at the top in the menu that says find a local advisor. You type in your city or your zip code, and hopefully one of our 70 plus locations is near you, and you will find somebody. There'll be a map, you'll click on it, and you will find the contact information for someone who can help you with placement, with the Beyond Driving with Dignity, as well as elder care consulting, because that is a big part of our business as well. We help people make decisions. That's what we specialize in.
That's great. And what about your book? This book that we've been talking about today. Amazon?
Amazon. Yeah.
Great. So if you want to get
Definitely.
Marcy's book, if you want to get Marcy's book, again, it's called Assisted Living Questions I Wish I Had Asked. It's a very comprehensive list of over 200 questions that you as a caregiver might want to consider asking when you're searching for a lovely place for your loved one to live. So go to Amazon, find the book, get the book, read it. Marcy is a wonderful expert and very knowledgeable in her profession, but the book was written out of her journey with her parents, a mom that had dementia and dad she helped care for, and she learned what she needed to know when she didn't know it, and she put it all in a book for you, the caregiver, so that you can not have to recreate that wheel, right? Not to
Well,
go
and
through.
I want to say one thing about the questions is that 200 questions is a lot of questions. You're not going to walk into a building and ask 200 questions. And you're going to read this book and you're going to say, this doesn't apply to me. I don't care about that, or that's not important to my mom. But you will find the key questions that you need to ask that hopefully will make your experience a little bit easier.
Yeah,
And make your
absolutely.
decision clearer.
Yeah. So use it as a guide. It's a guide, right? It's a guide. It's
Exactly
helpful.
what it
Use
is.
as a guide to generate those questions. And thank you, Marcy, so much for being here today.
Thank you,
I
Marcia.
love talking to you. I'm in Florida,
Likewise.
you're in California, but by the magic of technology, we get to meet here face to face. Thank you so much for everything that you've done and you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for that as well. And I hope to see you guys at Living with Dementia. I don't think I said when it is. It's next Tuesday, the 21st.
September
Did I even say that?
21st.
Yeah.
I don't think we did, actually. Good
We didn't.
point.
Okay. Between the
I
two of
think
us,
it's-
we didn't say it.
Next week, September 21st, I believe is Tuesday. So you can
Okay.
get in on that, Living with Dementia, and send an email and get onto that. And last but not least, don't forget to ask for your 36-hour day book. It's free. All you have to do is send an email to delray@arden-courts.com, and they'll be happy to mail this book right to you. It's a wonderful gift for someone if you're looking to help a caregiver and they don't have this, or if you are a caregiver, this is a great book. It's a good resource to have. So this has been wonderful. Please come back
Thank you so
another
much.
time and join us. It's really been a pleasure. And I want to
Thanks,
thank the
Marcia.
audience. Thank you. Want to thank everybody that's tuned in today, watching or listening on iHeartRadio. We're here every Tuesday, 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern time, and we have different guests and different topics. So let everybody know about it. And I hope to see you all next time on Caregiver Solution Info Show. And the website is caregiversolutions.info. Take care. Have a good night. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week.